Good afternoon. Welcome to reInvent Day 1. Everybody having a good time? Awesome. Looking forward to a great afternoon here. I'm Rob Boticher. I'm the director of our technology team for automotive manufacturing globally. I have the pleasure today of introducing this session with one of our most innovative customers, Toyota and Toyota Connected. This session today, I think, really shows how AWS and Toyota really work together in a number of different areas. Toyota is one of our customers that pushes us in new directions, and we really innovate together across the connected space, across supply chain, across engineering, across multiple disciplines, across the entire automotive industry. So I want to thank Toyota for coming in here and spending some time on this session. And what this session is really about is how we took, how Toyota actually helped innovate and drive their connected platform and how to migrate it to a new system over time. And we did this with zero downtime. So we've asked Kevin to come up, talk through the journey he went through and the challenges we went through as this whole platform was migrated. So Kevin, I'm going to introduce you and have you take a session off.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Odell. I'm the Director of Engineering at Toyota Connected, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about a thing we call Drivelink and a thing we call Safety Connect from Toyota Connected. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about what Toyota Connected is, what Drivelink is. We're going to dive into our Safety Connect platform a little bit because I really want you to understand what the true product is of our Safety Connect product that we offer our customers. And then we're going to talk about our migration. And Sandeep is going to come up and talk a little bit from an AWS perspective on what they recommend from a migration. And then I'm going to come back up and dive into our actual migration and the steps that we took to move our platform to AWS. And then if we got time at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the future and where we're going and what we're looking at doing. So a little bit of an introduction to Toyota Connected. So Toyota Connected was actually established in 2016. And it was really to enable Toyota's global vision to be more of a mobility company and drive mobility globally. TCNA, which is Toyota Connected North America, is an independent Toyota company, and we really serve as like a software hub and an innovation hub, really focused on big data, AI, advanced software engineering, and it's really a focus on the customer and working in partnership with other Toyota entities. In 2018, our now chairman, used to be our president of Toyota Motors Corporation, Akio Toyoda said, "It's my goal to transform Toyota from an automotive company to a mobility company." Right? And the possibilities of what we can build, in my mind, are endless. And that really put us on the tip of the spear to be able to provide this for Toyota globally. So Toyota Connected, if we break this down holistically, we've really got 4 different pillars of, I would say, in-market product. So from left to right, we've got our mobility area. They house and utilize all the data we get from our connected vehicles. The second item there is labs, our labs area. They built from the ground up a AI-powered virtual agent that is actually live in our newest Toyota vehicles today that have our new Toyota multimedia system. Excuse me. Our UI UX area, they really focus on the cockpit experience and the multimedia experience of the head unit. So where you have all your your digital display and all that good stuff. They really focus on bringing the kind of new age design to that unit. And then the last area is Drivelink, and that's Safety Connect, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So from a Drivelink perspective, our mission is really to build best-in-class solutions that reimagine safety and save lives. So what actually is that? What is Safety Connect? So in a Toyota and Lexus vehicle, we have what we call an SOS button. It's a button you can click, and you can talk to an agent, what we call a safety agent. Really, they're there to help you with whatever you need. You've got a question about your vehicle, you need to have an emergency. At the click of a button, they're able to contact local law enforcement or whoever they need to really help you out. The second feature we have is what we call our automatic crash notification. This is if the unfortunate situation, you get in an accident, we automatically know that. where our system kind of receives that signal, and then all of a sudden, within seconds, the safety agent will call into your vehicle and say, hey, we saw that you were in an accident. How can I help you? The third thing that we really supply is that roadside assistance. We all know that, right? Flat tire, car won't start. Click of a button real quickly, our safety agent is there to help you and to get you the roadside assistance that you need. And then the fourth feature that we offer under Safety Connect is stolen vehicle locator. This is our ability to really track your vehicle, whether the ignition is on or whether the ignition is off. If you have a stolen vehicle or need to figure out if you have approval, obviously from local authorities, that we can track your vehicle, we can actually figure out where your vehicle is and then report that back to the authorities. This is a really cool feature that actually morphed into even more than that. So we have what we call our live tracking. So if there's a missing person, a kidnapping, and even recently with in some of the news where there's manhunts and things like that, oftentimes we actually get contacted by the FBI to assist them in tracking the vehicles. So behind each one of those features that I talked about is what we call a Safety Connect agent. These folks are extremely important. We've got about 300 trained agents that are trained to respond in any type of emergency somebody may have, a Toyota or Lexus customer may have. And we really use the concept of omotenashi, which is a Japanese concept of really the hospitality, being there for the customer, thinking, putting our ego aside and anticipating the needs of the customer and supplying whatever we can to that customer or guest of our vehicles at all times. Now, this is a very tough job, not really a job that I would want. And it's really hard to explain exactly how important these folks are, but I've got a couple of sound recordings I'd like you to listen to. There are actually a few of the calls, real live calls, that really kind of set the tone of what our folks actually experience.
Safety Connect Response Center, we've received an emergency notification from your vehicle. How may we help? Hello?
911, what is the address for your emergency?
Hi, yes, this is Monique with Toyota Emergency Services. We just received an automatic collision notification at 1404 IL13.
We got officers going to the area.
Thank you.
We have received an emergency notification from your vehicle. How may we help?
We just hit the guardrail.
Do you need me to send police and ambulance, tow truck? What you need?
Absolutely.
It's more than a stolen vehicle. This person just had a stroke and has dementia and left in this vehicle, and they're really concerned for his safety and the safety of others.
Yes, we're doing what I call a live tracking, so we have the location second by second.
This is Olmsted County calling. I have Safety Connect on the phone, and they're giving us a live track of the vehicle. Nicole,
Yes.
Go ahead. What's the most current?
Okay, the most current now, it's showing at 100 Houston Street in Hoka.
Okay, they've got him stopped.
Great.
Now, I know it is really cold, a lot colder than I thought it was going to be in Vegas, but I've definitely got goosebumps, and I've watched that thing about 700 times. And I'll say those are a little bit of the tamer ones that are important. Our safety agents really get a breadth of anything you can imagine from our customers, and they are able to respond to what they need. So if we take a quick peek into what do those safety agents actually use, this is actually kind of the interface that they use. It's a Salesforce shell, custom development within Salesforce. Bottom left-hand corner is a little Twilio plugin. This is all supported by the Drivelink team. Actually, I would say built and supported by the Drivelink team. As engineers, it's extremely, extremely important that every button works every time a safety agent uses our application. So Safety Connect, this is a subscription service that we offer from Toyota. If you go on the app or go to toyota.com, you can actually read about Safety Connect and the subscription service. And if you buy a Toyota or Lexus vehicle, we actually give you a Toyota vehicle 1 year free trial and a Lexus 3-year trial. with a new purchase of a vehicle. But what we found out is that folks that actually used our services, their renewal rate was extremely high because they're like, wow, I really need this stuff. It's really good. It was there for me. But then we found out that folks that never used it, they go, I don't need the safety services. I'm the good driver here. I'm not the bad driver. I'm not going to need it, right? And so their renewal rate was real low. And so it's really tough for us when we own this product and go, it's such a good product, and people that need to use it, it's so important because we're there to save lives. So we actually, just recently, in our newest, aligned with our newest multimedia system, have now made it up to 10 years complimentary. So it's a 10-year trial now for our customers. This was pretty big news. This was definitely, we were first in the market to do this. So the first OEM to supply this, made kind of front page of the auto industry news. But it's extremely important for us to be able to do that. Take the question off the customer's plate. We know you need these services, whether it's 6 years, 1 year, whatever. We want to be there for you. We want to supply the services that we offer to our customers. Now, there is a cost here, right? And so we had to make sure that we were very cost efficient in everything that we do, and we're watching how much things are. One of the reasons we moved to AWS was to bring our costs down. And so we do credit this migration to AWS as a reason we're able to offer 10 years to our customers of Safety Connect with a lower cost of running our system on AWS. So another thing that our folks do, if you remember back from a slide where it said Safety Connect Destination Assist, our Safety Connect agents, or our agents, actually do provide some concierge type services when it comes to navigation. Click a button, boom, you can actually talk to an agent to figure out where you want to go. Along with that, with our platform, we do the little DCM or data communication model that's in the vehicle. We do interact a lot with that, making sure that that thing is healthy and it's got the right, I'd say, configurations. So all the Safety Connect type services and remote services do work for the vehicle. That's part of our Safety Connect platform as well. We do subscription and billing. You saw the agent portal that we have. We also have one from an operations perspective. All of that together makes up our Safety Connect platform and what we offer. So by the numbers, we have about 9 million vehicles that are activated on our system. We received about 5 million calls to our Safety Connect agents. About 300,000 of those were safety-related calls where we actually had to have local authorities respond to the incident. And then we've also handled about 12,000 stolen vehicle requests that have come our way. So getting into a little bit more of the technology underneath in the actual platform, we could sit up here and talk all the time, all day about the abilities, right, of the platform. Availability, scalability. We know those are almost becoming table stakes for everything we do now. Resiliency is extremely important for us. We have to have backups for our backups, redundancies for our redundancies. We have to always make sure that our system is up and available for our customers. But even more important to that, as I alluded to before, cost optimization is extremely, extremely important to us. And every decision we make, there's a cost aspect to that to keep it as low as we possibly can so we can provide these services to our customers in the way that we want to, taking the question away from the responsibility away from the customers on if they need the service or not. We want to supply that service to our customers. So as you can imagine, vehicle data coming in, AWS Direct Connect, you talk about on-prem, right? A lot, large organizations on-prem to the cloud. We think about our vehicles on a private network as kind of our on-prem. We connect up with AWS Direct Connect to bring that data into our platform, our ecosystem. When you talk about AWS and the AWS services that we utilize, it's not, you look at that and go, oh, that's not that much, right? It's not real complex. It's not one of those really pretty diagrams that has all these lambdas and things all over it, right? But the bread and butter of what we do is in Kubernetes, right? So in EKS, and you'll see a picture here in a second, that's where a lot of our actual work happens. But overall, it's fairly simple. Our footprint in AWS is pretty small. We do have two core components. These are SaaS offerings, MongoDB and Cloud AMQP. Mongo, obviously, for our data, Cloud AMQP. We do have a microservices architecture, so all the back-end communication between the services is eventing, right? So we use RabbitMQ for all the communication back between, between our services. Multi-AZ, it's kind of a no-doubter with our type of system. Also multi-region. Extremely important that we have redundancy for our redundancy. Then we add in the complexities of, well, we've got Salesforce and Twilio too, right? Those UIs that we supply for our safety agents. Extremely, extremely important. We also have the mobile network that all the vehicles have to communicate over. Now we talked a little bit about the safety services that we provide. There's 6,500 different local emergency call response centers around North America. We have to be able to integrate with all of them and make sure we can route our calls to those different those emergency call centers along with the data, right? That's extremely, extremely important. We can't break that connection. Also, roadside, being able to contact our roadside partners, which is a number of different roadside partners, and again, send them the voice, but then also the data with that. And then as you can imagine, all the different corporation type back-end communication integrations that we're gonna have with our master systems. And then we gotta keep all of our engineers happy, right? So big GitLab, Argo CD fans, obviously with Kubernetes. As you can imagine, mission critical. So PagerDuty, Datadog, all the monitoring that we do, integrated with Slack, uber important. That's a key piece that we cannot break. And as I mentioned earlier, that's where our sauce is. There's a reason that stuff's blurred out a little bit, but this is where the complexity lies. Hundreds and hundreds of microservices that make all the action kind of work, right? So as we move to a new platform, we gotta make sure that we don't break any of those services. And to talk a little bit just about the team, right? We have really strong product owner, product managers. We've got really strong software engineers. And then our safety agents are represented by our contact center operations folks. We are one cohesive unit. And the picture in the background is actually our team represented by all of those different areas, planning and make sure that we are talking about the needs from every different area, whether it's tech debt, whether it's for our safety agents, whether it's for a new feature that we want to give to our customers. We're consistently talking, prioritizing, making sure that we're all on the same page. Same page. So I'm gonna have Sandeep come up. He's gonna give you a little bit of from an AWS perspective, things to be looking at from a migration perspective.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for sharing those impressive stats on Drivelink. It's great to see millions of customers benefiting from this service. What I truly like about Toyota and what impresses me the most is this relentless pursuit towards perfection. Perfection in improving the quality of the vehicles as newer models come out, perfection in improving the safety of the occupants that are driving those vehicles. And I'm a loyal Lexus fan. I have been driving a Lexus or different versions of Lexuses over the last 25 years. I probably shouldn't say that because I'm dating myself, but kudos to the Toyota team and keep raising the bar. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk about all of the capabilities that are available to customers that are embarking on a migration journey. Typically, when customers embark on this journey, we view it through 3 different phases and the tools and capabilities that we can bring in each of these phases. In the assess phase, we go through what we refer to as a migration readiness assessment to have an assessment of where you are in terms of your migration journey. This typically involves a rapid discovery of your infrastructure, your application portfolio, the interdependencies, so that we have a good idea in terms of how to plan those migrations. And one of the outputs from that is what we refer to as the TCO report, or the total cost of ownership, which is an important vehicle to help you establish your business case for migration. From there, we move into the mobilize phase. The mobilize phase, in my mind, is more of the experiential learning aspects of this. So this is where customers take a dozen or so applications and take it through the entire process of migration, soup to nuts, and have them operate out of AWS. There's a variety of things that happen in the Mobilize space, as depicted here through those 8 building blocks. There is the discovery and planning. Customers build their own data center in the cloud, leveraging our landing zones and control tower. There is a detailed migration plan that is drawn up based on the rapid discovery work that we had done earlier. And it incorporates security, compliance, and the new operating model that you are going to develop as you decide to operate in the cloud. So armed with that experiential knowledge of having migrated a dozen applications, you're now ready for phase 3, which is the migration phase. Sometimes we refer to it as a migration factory. And the intent behind this is that you're perfecting the knowledge from the first few applications that you took into the next wave, into the next dozen applications, perfecting the operating model, perfecting the automation, and making sure that you can operate at scale. A lot of times there is some modernization involved depending upon the applications, especially the applications that have future potential in terms of customer experience. And that's where we can look into deeper services, serverless capabilities, and other techniques to help modernize those platforms. So it's easy to get overwhelmed, but there's a variety of tools and mechanisms that we bring to the table. And when I say we, I'm talking about us, AWS Professional Services, but also a robust ecosystem of partners that can help you. Just a few tools to highlight. We talked about the business case. So a tool called TSO Logic that can help you build that initial directional business case that can be used to justify your migrations. We have the application discovery service, which can go crawl your infrastructure, help you understand all of the applications, the dependencies of those applications, the network traversals around it, so that as we plan for migrations, we can figure out what the appropriate sequencing needs to be as we go on this journey. In the mobilize phase, the key thing is customers want to build their own data center in the cloud. So we have tools out of the box, we have landing zones, we have control tower that can help you with that. And a super cool tool that we acquired called Cloud Endure basically takes away all of the heavy lifting if your migration pattern is one of lift and shift, or if your migration pattern is something that we refer to as rehosting. Very rapid acceleration, all of the heavy lifting is gone, and you can get some pretty quick turnarounds for those migrations. And in the migrate phase, you have two key services, the server migration service and the database migration service. These names, actually, for a change, actually refer to what the services do. And we fully understand that environments will be hybrid for some time. You will continue to operate on-prem. You will have some footprint on-prem, some footprint in AWS. And so we have Outposts that can help you. We also have VMware Cloud that can help you in those situations. And then last but not least, where you have data and data that needs to be transferred from on-prem to AWS. Again, a variety of capabilities that are available to you through data sync. We have a transfer family of products. We have physical hardware devices like Snowball that you can order, transfer the data within your data center, tens of terabytes. Capacity is 70, 80 terabytes that we can ship in one bulk. And you also have storage gateway, and you can establish the direct connect pipe that can move a lot of this data back and forth. So to recap, there's a comprehensive set of services and expertise that we bring to the table. The beauty is that we have done these migrations for hundreds of thousands of customers. And we have captured the best practices. We've harvested that knowledge from all of these migrations. And we're able to distill that into what we refer to as prescriptive guidance that we can share with customers that are embarking on this journey. You can embark on that journey with AWS Professional Services, but as I mentioned before, We have a very, very robust system, a very, very robust set of partners that can help you on this journey. These partners have significant expertise from an operations perspective, security, compliance, developing migration factories, and also developing a learning curriculum to help upskill your organization. And then last but not least, AWS is an innovation machine. Back when I started 10 years ago, I was working at Capital One when I was doing the first set of migrations, and we only had a handful of services. We had S3, we had EC2, we had RDS. Fast forward to now, there's over 200 different services ranging from databases, analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, IoT, Internet of Things, and the innovation continues at a rapid, breathtaking pace at AWS. And so your investments in migrations are secure, and you will be able to reap additional benefits over time. So this is sort of painting the holistic picture of everything that we have to offer to customers as they embark on this journey. So zeroing back now on what was the help that Toyota requested. Toyota is a big customer. They have multiple workloads that are in AWS today. And so in this particular case, it was some of the nuances of this architecture, specifically around the networking, microservices, and the message bus that they needed some additional help around. And so they engaged AWS Professional Services. And professional services brings in a variety of experience. So in this particular case, they helped with guidance around the architecture through well-architected reviews. They helped from a security perspective. They brought in all of the best practices. They developed resiliency patterns working with Toyota. They developed disaster recovery patterns, guided the team on scalability aspects of it. And all of this was possible because we had these DevOps engineering resources from ProServe that worked side by side with Toyota. So they were part of that same team. They would pick up stories from the Jira board and execute those stories just like any other Toyota employees would. Now, behind the scenes, these DevOps engineers from AWS obviously had access to thousands of AWS professionals and specialists. So if anything that came up that was technical or was a roadblock, they could rely on the internal AWS professional services network to be able to solve any obstacles that came up. And when you look at the migration scope, this particular migration of Drivelink had 4 critical components. The network to ensure that vehicles could transmit data to the cloud. The message bus, which is a decoupling architecture for all of the messages to come in. Microservices to ingest those messages and derive insights from them to really understand the severity of the situation that the customer is in, as a result of this fender bender or accident. And then obviously, all of the data that needs to be stored in the databases. Now, these 4 in and itself are not sufficient. They are coupled with 5 foundational capabilities that are super important in terms of scaling to the millions of users that would use these services, ensuring that we have a robust, reliable architecture in place. So ensuring that we're using the multiple availability zones within a region in AWS, as well as multiple regions within a geography within AWS, coupled with robust monitoring capabilities to ensure that any faults are detected immediately and that corrective action can be put in place. In many cases, automated corrective actions, but in some cases, manual intervention. And supplemented by robust automation, so as to increase the velocity of production deployments, but also ensuring that human mistakes are avoided. And then last but not least is a robust testing and functional validation. to make sure that the applications being migrated are tested, thoroughly. All of the use cases are vetted out, and there is proper functional sign-off from a testing perspective. So now I'm going to invite Kevin back on stage, where we will take a look at the decision framework that Toyota used to decide on the specific services that they use for this migration and the business outcomes.
All right. Thanks, Sandeep. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about our actual migration and why we did it and how we handled it. So if you think about it from a why do we want to migrate? I've already talked about the cost reduction. That's extremely, extremely important for us. We also wanted to be a little bit more aligned with some of our connected systems at Toyota. They were already in AWS, so it makes things a little bit easier for us. There was proven availability and stability, and resiliency, so we didn't really need to worry about that. Enterprise support and some of the volume discounts, that's always a good thing, right? So now we can contribute to that and then receive some of those discounts, going back to the cost optimization. And then also the talent and knowledge fungibility, which is always a fun word to say. But that's really about being able to share across the teams, right? If you have another team that's working at AWS and they've already fought some battles and now we're in AWS, we're not going to be fighting the same battles. If we're in a different cloud, we may be fighting similar battles but not able to help each other. Also, being able to have resources kind of go back and forth, work on different things, being in AWS actually helps us with that as far as the resources kind of being familiar and knowing what they're up against if they move to different areas. So when it came to actually talking about the AWS, and I didn't mention this earlier, but we are from Texas. So I told Nate, Nate's right here actually, so if you have any questions later, Nate's willing to take all of those. I told him I didn't really care how they migrated. I didn't really care how long it took. Just make sure there's no customer impact. That was our number one key migration principle. And the reason why this was so important is I talked about Twilio before. We had just moved to Twilio. We had tore out our call routing platform before and the telephony platform that our safety agents were using and moved to Twilio, and we had no downtime at all. At all. We had prepared to potentially have downtime and have to roll back and do all that good stuff, but we had no downtime. So we had already done this once. So I told Nate, hey, we're going to do this again. I trust that you guys can do it. And this was the exact look that he gave me, that little smirk, like, okay, Kevin, well, we'll figure it out, right? So we worked together to figure out what are the principles, what are the things that we care about? Obviously, no customer impact. Oops. Lift and shift functionality. This was an important one, and this is one that we had to really work with our product owners and our product managers about. We wanted to make sure that when we moved from our current cloud platform, we moved to AWS, we weren't going to be able to change in a whole bunch of things, adding new features and trying to do new things. Lift and shift this puppy as much as we can because the complexities under the hood of the system were great, right? And so we needed to make sure that we didn't touch anything so we knew when we moved exactly what the issue was going to be. If we started adding new things on top of that, now you don't know where the issues are at. So lift and shift functionality was very important. Low risk, boring deployments. Low risk, boring deployments. No superheroes, right? Don't try to do this all in one swoop. Take your time, low risk. We don't want to impact the customer. And it can be boring deployments, right? Remain cost conscious, so all the decisions we made, cost was always a piece of that. And then something that we're very proud of, just being a Toyota company, Kaizen, continuous improvement all the time. Now, this wasn't a migration principle. This is just really how we work and everything that we do. But we wanted to make sure we didn't forget that. So if we created a plan, as Mike Tyson says, right? Everybody has a good plan until you get punched in the face. Well, we knew that, hey, we're going to create a plan, but we're going to continuously iterate over that plan and be okay making changes. And so what we did was Nemawashi. And so Nemawashi is really laying the groundwork or foundation and building consensus. So really asked Nate and his team to work across our Drivelink whole team and area to say, what are some key decisions that we need to make before we embark on this journey? And then also, what's the plan? What do we think that plan's going to be? And we wanted to get consensus. I wanted to get consensus for the people that work with our call center, all of our engineers, not just our DevOps and infrastructure engineers, everybody, and then also from our product owners and product managers to make sure that we were all on the same page. We knew where we were going to go, and we're all going to be in this together. So some of the key decisions that we made along the way, we had when we're in our current platform, our old platform, we're big Kubernetes fans, right? Or Kubernetes users. Nate and his team, big Kubernetes fans, right? So trying to take that away from them, that wasn't something they wanted to do. And going back to our principle of not changing a lot and try to lift and shift, we decided to move to EKS rather than ECS, right? So EKS still provides us that Kubernetes feel, the touch, and it was much more similar to our current platform to where we wanted to go in the future, rather than kind of switching stuff up and going to ECS. There may have been some small cost savings moving to ECS, but we decided from a comfort perspective and where we wanted to go, we were going to go with EKS. As I noted before, our vehicles are on our private network, and that comes into us. So we actually host a private DNS. Nate's team really, really enjoys hosting private DNS. I'm sure everybody loves DNS. And the old state was we had that run in with core DNS on Kubernetes, right? We had the option to look and say, hey, could we move this to Route 53? And pretty much everything that you listed, the reliability, not having to manage the infrastructure, we're like, yeah, Route 53 sounds really good, until we looked at the cost. And the way that we were set up, when we started crunching some numbers, the cost was about 10 times of what it would be to actually run it on EKS. So in the spirit of lift and shift, we shifted it, and we currently run that on EKS, and we don't use Route 53, at least for our internal private network. So when we were in Azure, we were using their Azure Service Bus as our backbone messaging for messaging. So we're very, very tied to them. So we had to make a decision. Are we going to use Amazon MQ, or is there something else out there that we want to use? Team did a whole bunch of due diligence, crunched some numbers, looked at where we wanted to go in the future, and actually made the decision to use a third-party SaaS offering from 84 Codes called Cloud AMQP, which is actually RabbitMQ underneath. This was a decision we made that really then keeps us cloud agnostic, which is a benefit if leadership ever came to us and said we need to move again, right? This gets us in the right direction. And the cost was actually cheaper for us to do this. So we made the decision to use Cloud AMQP. So we do communicate over multiple VPCs. And when you talk about the communication over multiple VPCs, everything you see is going to say, use Transit Gateway, everywhere. We wanted to use Transit Gateway. We were on our path to do it. We had it set up. And then we fell into a situation where there was some costing implications with our private network and connecting that up to us that was going to actually blow our costs out of the water. So we actually decided to use AWS Direct Connect Gateway, which is a little bit more overhead for us and not the preferred method, definitely not the preferred method from an AWS perspective, but from a costing perspective, it definitely won us over, and it was a decision we just had to make really because of the costing impacts of that. This is something that we are readdressing. We are looking for a Transit Gateway kind of on the back, the back of everything to allow some of that talking and the connections back and forth, but not from the vehicle network coming in, at least at this point. So we'll get into a little bit of the migration. So I alluded to a little bit of kind of what our previous kind of architecture and high-level look was. So we were in Azure, pretty much mirrors the setup that you guys saw from an AWS perspective. But when we went and said, how are we going to do this migration, we really came to 6 different steps. And it may not have been like the first day we said, yeah, it's going to be 6 steps. But as we worked our way through it, as we Kaizened our approach, it came down to being about 6 different steps. And we're going to walk through what those actually were. So the first thing we did was we wanted to migrate to RabbitMQ. So this actually is a cloud agnostic tool. So we could have set this up in Azure and updated all of our code to actually point to this in Azure, but we made the decision to point or to actually load it up in AWS so we wouldn't have to migrate it again. Tons and tons of effort went into, first of all, updating all of our libraries, making sure we didn't break that backbone of our architecture. That was extremely, extremely important. But then also making sure that there wasn't any latency issues. And being asynchronous, there's a tiny, tiny bit of latency, but nothing that was going to cause any pain to us or our customers. So that was an interesting migration. I would say this was probably one of the most intense and really included all of our teams to make sure we got this right. And this was the first big step for us to be able to really kind of start this whole migration. The second step in this was move MongoDB. I will say this was actually probably the easiest step in the whole thing. They provide a nice little UI for you. Click a couple buttons, takes your data, takes it from one cloud, moves it to the next cloud, kind of sit there and just kind of twiddle your thumbs while you watch that data move, and everything just kind of works. It was an extremely important step. We had to validate that the data was copied over and everything was working correctly. But in the end, looking back, we're like, man, that was actually one thing that we really didn't have to worry about too much because of the way it was set up. So that was a benefit of us already being in more of a cloud agnostic situation with using Mongo. The third step was actually deploying our Drivelink services in AWS. So actually setting those up, making sure that the connectivity was there, making sure that things were running. We weren't seeing any crazy resource types of deals. And the cool thing here is that because we're using Cloud AMQP, so that backend messaging, so messages were coming from Azure and they were in Cloud AMQP or in Rabbit, Nate and his team actually had the ability to turn on one of our regions just a little bit, so it actually consumed some of those messages. We could see some things kind of fly through in AWS, and then we could shut it off, right? So then we could say, hey, things are working. All right, logs are looking good, monitoring's looking good. Or if we saw any errors, we can go, oh crap, all right, we can't activate this whole big dog right now. We got to actually, kind of attack some of these things. So this was a really, really cool kind of a step of, it was really kind of a canary type of deployment. And having that ability to just kind of trigger it on and off to see how things were looking. But in the end, team felt comfortable, took some time, let things bake a little bit, until we then went to our fourth step, which is italicized for a reason. This was the big one. This is the one where we actually want to say, okay, let's take that vehicle data and let's point that over to AWS. With this, as you can see, all the cool animation there, you kind of see the flow of data now is all in AWS, right? And then we kind of start shutting things off on the Azure side. We were able to do this because of the private DNS that we owned on the Azure side. We kept the DNS over on the Azure side while we actually did this migration. We didn't want to move that over to AWS at the same time that we started to fire all the data over there. That was just too much to change at one time. So we left the DNS over there. We just put our AWS IPs in there, did some rolling restarts, and then we started seeing the vehicle data slowly move over to AWS. Obviously, we did this region by region, as slow as we possibly could, did some validation to make sure, hey, things are good. We actually at one time had two regions in AWS, 2 regions in Azure, all processing our vehicle data. So it was actually, we actually had a multi-cloud situation for a little bit, a true multi-cloud, which was cool. Once the team felt good, like, hey, things on the AWS side are looking good, then we were able to shut that off on the Azure side and actually go full AWS. The next step was actually moving that the DNS from Azure over to AWS. This was a little tricky. I mean, it wasn't. DNS is always fun. I think that's a direct quote from Nate. This was really just in our private network. We just took one of our, because we had two regions, took one of the regions down from a DNS perspective, let it kind of fizzle out so it wasn't there then on our private network. Take that same IP address, fire it up on the AWS side, right? Core DNS, load that stuff up, fire it up, make sure everything was working. And once it became visible through the Direct Connect, then we actually started seeing, okay, now the DNS over on the AWS side is actually being utilized. Things are good. Then we move the other one from the other region over to AWS. This was everything went very well, but this was one that was very tricky because if you screw up any of the DNS stuff, right, that kind of ruins the whole system. So this took a lot of time, a lot of planning from the team. They had multiple options, but once they did it, everything was good. And I think it may have been the one before when we actually started getting all the vehicle data to AWS. I was actually here last year at reInvent. I got a message from Nate. I may have been at a bar because it was kind of late. He's like, hey, we're live in AWS now. And so that was a pretty cool victory for the team. But it would be a year now that we've actually got all of our data flowing through AWS. So step 6 was we do use Redis. This was a fairly easy kind of move. We used a tool called Riot Redis. You actually fire up an EC2 instance. It'll sync Redis between Azure and AWS. Once things were synced, we just did a rolling restart of our services and started feeding off Redis in AWS. And at that point, we were then complete. We could tear down Redis on the Azure side, and now we're back to where we wanted to be on AWS. Now, if you remember, picture gets pretty complicated pretty quickly. Every one of those steps was very, very rigorous from a testing perspective. We didn't just make sure that the services were looking good and we weren't seeing errors in the log. We were making sure that every one of these connections was healthy, was good, no issues. We had our safety agents, very close connection with them to make sure that they weren't seeing anything weird at all. We made sure that we ourselves actually would get in our vehicles, would drive around. I know I got it in my vehicle in the early morning hours at some points to hit the SOS button to make sure that the connections were still working. Very important that every time we made a change, we validated. So we have a whole bunch of test automation. That's pretty standard these days. A lot of scenario tests that go end to end as best we could. But the manual verification that we were able to do, and you can actually see Nate there at one of our benches that we have, was extremely, extremely important because that gave us the satisfaction and the understanding that a true live vehicle out there on the road is actually working. And we got that confirmation, and we got that from ourselves. Obviously, the monitoring and observability, critical. We had to make sure that everything that was working on the Azure side is working in AWS. We were watching those like hawks. So in the end, so this is our Drivelink team. It was very much an iterative 4-month migration with no impact to our customers. Now, the 4 months was when we first made that change to Cloud AMQP until we moved to Redis, right? That's 4 months of that migration. And there's a reason it was 4 months, and that was because we wanted it to be very low risk. We didn't want any heroes. We wanted it to be boring. We wanted to take our time. We wanted things to bake to make sure that we're not seeing any issues. Because the number one priority, right? No impact to the customers. So there was nobody that was saying, we've got to get this done in 2 weeks. And even if they did come back and say, oh, we could do these things together, we said, no, we're going to take our time. So 4 months from the beginning to the start. Now the planning phase there's a good 6 to 8 months before all of that. And in the test environment, it's making sure everything works and iterating there. But actually the production rollout was 4 months. So I asked Nate, Nate's team is in here. I said, Nate, hey, give me a picture. I want to represent your team, show your team. Like, you guys did such hard work here. It's about 4 of them. Like, just send me a picture so I can show you guys. This is what he sent me. So I had to display it. I really asked him, like, hey, give me something that really shows like how you guys worked through the migration. Do you have any pictures of when you guys worked together and you changed anything? And this is what he sent. So now, obviously, there's some key reflections. As Taiichi Ono says, if you don't have any problems, that's a problem, right? You're always going to have problems. You got to be okay with that. So plan and iteratively adjust. We know our plans aren't going to always work. You got to be able to adjust and be okay with that. That was extremely important for us to make sure that we could adjust as we go. Lean on others for help. As Sandeep talked about, we really did work with professional services a lot, and that embedded AWS DevOps engineer was huge. He was part of our team. He was in our stand-ups. He was taking work from our teams. That was huge for us to get us a step above where we had to be or where we needed to get to. And he could answer all those questions for us, and he had all those resources behind him. So that was very, very key. But as you can see from some of those decisions, we always wanted to make sure that we verified and made sure that it worked for us, right? And when it comes to costing, there's sometimes where the preferred solution, or this is what everybody's doing, wasn't always the right choice. So we always made sure that we verified and went back and made sure that look at our principles and what we wanted, what we were focused on and what was important to us to make sure that our solution met those needs. Don't underestimate the level of effort. I mean, I showed you our footprint in AWS. It doesn't look that complex. Underneath it, it very much is. And a connected vehicle network, a private network, is extremely, extremely complex. And there's a lot of moving parts. So go to the Gemba is something that we often say at Toyota. That's going to the work, going to the team that's responsible for doing the work and talking to them and understanding their concerns and what they're going through. So there's many times I talked to Nate, I talked to his team and said, okay, tell me what it's going to take to move this DNS, right? Like, give me some of the details there to really help me understand. All right, it's complex and it's risky. We got to make sure we do it right, right? So go to the Gemba was always something that was very, very important to us. And the clouds are different. They really are. They may seem like, oh, this service is very similar to this service. That's not always the case. We did have a couple of issues where we thought things were good because we looked at the things that we would have maybe when we were in Azure, where maybe it was a little bit different in AWS, or maybe there's things that we can't see over here in AWS that we just didn't even know about, or that we didn't know that we couldn't see them. So you have to really lean into the unknown. Make sure you're asking the right questions. Make sure you have those contacts. Extremely, extremely important. Cost optimization, that continues to be number one for us. Lower costs that we can have to operate our systems, the better for our customer, the more innovation that we can do and provide for our customer at an extremely low cost. So we are continuously looking at different services in AWS to say, is it better if we did use this? Could we cut costs if we used Lambda instead of a whole bunch of Kubernetes pods out there, right? Like we're consistently going through and trying to refine our overall architecture to see if there is any changes that we want to make. And then AWS provides a ton of resources to where you can look underneath and understand your costing and where you're at, where you can get better, different things you can do. We do have a FinOps area at Toyota Connected that specializes in this, and this has been huge for us because they have a big time focus, and they're constantly tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, if you do this, you can save some money. So that's been really important to us, but we're actively inside all these different applications to make sure that we understand our costs and then where we want to get to in the future. So as we talk about the future and where we want to go, obviously cars are getting smarter. They're going to have more data. The more data that can be supplied to us, the better, right? From a safety perspective, us knowing that more information about any type of impacts of the vehicle, right side, left side, did the vehicle roll over, the occupants in the vehicle, right? Different things like that are extremely, extremely important because if we know it, we can tell law enforcement, we can tell the rescue folks what we know. And they always say there's a golden hour. They've got 1 hour to get the right response, the right people to the scene. So if we can tell them this was a big accident, there's a lot of people, and they can send 4 ambulances and potentially a chopper and get there within an hour and not have to just go there and, hey, we need another ambulance. Hey, we need the chopper, right? And the chopper gets there 2 hours later. If we can do that up front, that's huge for us. It's huge for our customers. It's huge for society, essentially. So we are continually as new generations of vehicles come, this is continuously where we're focusing. Also, AWS IoT Core, the communication between the vehicles and us, is something that we're continuously looking at improving as well. So we're delving into that in future iterations. I talked about our services, our Safety Connect services. Something we really want to do is we want to take that SOS button, that Safety Connect agent, out of the vehicle and potentially put it on the app for our customers. That's very, very important. These folks are there to help. We want to be able to help you. And so continuously thinking about that, how can we take our services that are very stricken to the vehicle right now outside to our customers at all times is something that's very close to us and something that we're very dedicated on doing. I couldn't speak at reInvent without saying generative AI, right? Like every presentation is going to have this. Obviously, when I talk about Toyota Connected, every area at Toyota Connected is looking at generative AI. Generative AI is something that human behavior doesn't necessarily need to change. It's really the technology that has the ability to change, to adapt to the behavior. And so when you think about the cockpit experience or driving a vehicle, the virtual agent that you can communicate with, even the interacting with the world around you, generative AI is going to be huge for all aspects of the vehicle. And that's something that we're very, very interested in. From a safety perspective, especially from us, you talk about call center, some of the cool things you can do from a call center perspective, being able to respond to the customer, being able to read it between the lines from a customer and having kind of some of that AI assist our agents is something that we're definitely looking at as we speak. Something that's really cool, so the recent Toyota Tacoma came out with this isodynamic seat, which actually has a whole bunch of kind of shock absorbers within the seat. So if you go off-roading, which a lot of Toyota people love to do, it actually will keep you a little bit more stable within the vehicle, right? If you're climbing on rocks and doing all that cool stuff. And we really want our customers to see that because it's awesome. But it's really hard when you go to a dealership for a dealership to take you 2 hours to find the local mountain to go climb, right? So our team at Toyota Connected actually built this contraption, everything but the seat, built this to bring that experience actually to the dealer. And this is actually at the SEMA show just a couple weeks ago. Really cool. On the screens up there is kind of a gamified experience that actually uses real live vehicle data. So your customer can actually get that experience. This just shows the creativity and where we're trying to go at Toyota Connected with all the kind of cool new technology. So that's really all I had for you today. I appreciate you guys coming and listening to our migration story. We only have 2 minutes left, so if there is any questions, we could take that, or you can come down and ask all your questions to Nate here, because he's the man that knows it all. But I appreciate y'all showing up.